everyone, Ariel Adams here with Superlative Podcast. Please listen to Blog to Watch's other podcast, Blog to Watch Weekly, where we talk about the latest watch news and reviews. Today on my Superlative is the returning guest, Sébastien Chaulmontet. Sébastien, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You are the founder of Albishorn. You work at Sellita. You more or less run their special AMT department. You have an incredible background in design and watchmaking, especially yours at Le Jeu Perret for Angelus and Ardell and Son. What am I forgetting?
Oh, I think nothing.
Your book?
Yeah, maybe, but I'm writing the second one right now. Which
you are? Is it a sequel or is it a different topic?
No, it's the same topic, but like the XXL version of it. The idea is to talk about 1,000 different chronographs.
Okay, so Sébastien has a book on chronographs, and it's very good. I think what I love about it is, I'll just call it the curation. It's like what you select. You know, it's the hardest thing to find an actual good list, right? There's a lot of bad watch lists on the internet. Oh, wow. I don't even know the half of it, but I'm afraid that if I would look deeper. Sébastien's book, which I forget the exact name, it's just called Chronograph or something.
Chronograph for collectors.
That's right. Chronograph for collectors. It's that, you're like, hey, if you're a collector, these are a few you should know about. Of course, there's others, but wow, is it a good place to start? So anyways, just wanted to plug your book there.
Oh, thank you.
Now it's going to be more chronographs for collectors.
Yeah, the idea was more like to make an encyclopedia of chronographs, like something when you are a watch designer and you want to have a look at what all have been done. I think with 1,000 chronographs, you cover it, not all, but most of it. So the idea was more like of a reference book. Also, of course, we put structure in it and we put links between the chronographs that it makes some kind of sense. But the idea is to cover 1,000 chronographs to give it like a complete overview, a bit like 1,000 chairs from which was edited by Taschen, which every designer has in his book store.
I love chairs.
So that would be the same idea somehow, that if any watch student or designer want to have a look at what have been done in chronographs, with 1,000, he gets quite a good overview.
That's exciting. Well, I'll look forward to seeing that. I'm pitching a few books right now. I learned that while I can write a book, if no one wants me to, it's not as fun or interesting as if I'm writing a book that someone wants. Ultimately, I pitch the ideas, but it's as a writer, it's very hard to work alone in isolation, isn't it?
It is, and I think also what also the truth is with the digital age, selling traditional books getting more and more difficult, especially when you are in quite of very specific topics like chronographs, and you don't really focus on the big names. Finding an editor is a bit of a struggle, right? So,
well, here's the irony, and I think this is funny, and I guess challenge me, but all these books, these watch books, there's a lot of them. They're pretty popular, actually. Every single one of them, for the most part, is sold or marketed online, right? So it's this physical book, which is great, but people only know about it or buy it on the internet. Let's hope they actually look at it. It used to be you had the digital world, you had the non-digital world they didn't really touch. Now the idea that we could read it online, but no, I want to order it so I can do it in a chair.
Yeah, because it's still a pleasure having a physical book in hands. It is, yeah.
It is.
But still, I would say you have so many pictures and so many information available online as well, that for many people, probably just owning the physical thing is not as important as it used to be. I really remember a time when we really owned these books because it was the only way of getting information. And nowadays, people have the impression, it's all around. And we'll see how it goes.
So I saw you not too long ago. We were in Dubai, and I have to say, I was kind of impressed at how much you and your European colleagues like the weather. Like, I guess because I'm in Los Angeles, it's not so cold, but everyone was like, do you know what we have to return to? Like a blanket across all of Europe of gray and cold. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, it is. Actually, if you would see, like, I'm looking out of the window, it's a definition of gray. You have different shades of it. No, honestly, people don't understand how much we suffer in the mountains to make their watches. They would appreciate it even more if they would know in which, when weather condition we have to produce these, you know. Now we are something in between snow and rain right now, without like 10 meters of visibility, and then you have some kind of fog. Now, honestly, yeah, I mean, you should really promote more watchmaking in California.
No, it wouldn't happen. And we actually have some of it here, but we're always going to have a disadvantage.
True. Sorry, you have Shapiro. So Shapiro is located, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. But I firmly believe it will be more difficult for them in the long run, because during those cold winter months, they have alternative things they can do other than make watches. This is the big problem. In the high mountains of Switzerland where watches are made, it's actually seen as a very nice thing to sit indoors all day and play with small tools, right? Yeah. Like that's better than the alternative.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but it's quite depressing nonetheless. It's probably also why so many famous watchmakers have an issue with alcoholism. But I agree that, Is this a current issue amongst your friend circle? No less, but there was a certain generation of independent watchmakers which were pretty known for having some trouble.
You mean the last 100 years?
Yeah, I mean, alcohol was always part of watchmaking, you know.
Like, what was that old joke? I remember like reading something from the early 20th century, and it was an American thing talking about like the drunk Swiss watchmaker, how this was like some type of a stereotype. Like, what was that?
Yeah, but there is something to it. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's also the kind of personalities which are drawn to watchmaking. I don't know.
Let me ask you this. Is watchmaking better, maybe even easier if you're drunk? Because it seems like it would put you at a disadvantage.
It's a big disadvantage, my goodness. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You should really find something else than alcohol, because drugs and alcohol are really not something good when you do micromechanics for.
It's not a performance enhancer. If it was, that's one thing.
Maybe,
but no.
Let's say it would put it that way. If you're really an alcoholic, you probably need a little bit to have your hand steady. But yeah, it's because you're already into the problem, right? So you solve the problem by adding some alcohol on top of it. But if you can avoid alcohol in the first place, you by far better.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question. You can politely refuse. Okay, generations of watchmaking culture in Switzerland. Note people, families, they all do it. They talk about tools and things like that. It's difficult to do that. What are the performance enhancing drugs? What are the chemicals used commonly by watchmakers to sit still for hours and do their thing? Is it Ritalin? Is it some type of tranquilizer? What allows people to do this when it's harder for them to do it?
No, honestly,
there's got to be stuff. There's got to be stuff.
Honestly, I never heard of anything. I think it's more a state of mind. I mean, you have to be a bit of an autistic somehow to love the fact of spending hours in really little
autistic
universes.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, yes. Being watchmaker, yeah, I mean, you need to love to be alone for quite some time. You want to and take care of a little microcosm, something of your own. I mean, if you are into that kind of stuff, you probably are not the most outspoken person. I mean, I know watchmakers who come in the morning and leave in the afternoon, and the only thing they say is hi and bye. So basically, hi in the morning and bye when they leave. So it's a state of mind, I would say. You have to.
I've never seen a watchmaker raise their voice.
Yeah, not many, and a lot of them are not really comfortable in public speaking. Or I mean, they have to nowadays, especially independents, because people also buy you watches because of you, because of who you are. But most of them, I think, they are really happy when they're alone and doing their stuff.
Well, this is part of why I got into this industry, is because, I originally was going to be an entertainment lawyer, and I recognized that in this context, I could do something very similar, where rather than, artists and musicians and actors that were the talent, it was basically these watchmakers who in a very real sense need that management and that structure around them, because once in a while they can do it all themselves, but that's the rare exception. Yeah, watchmakers are like their own worst enemy. Like, let them make watches, don't let them do anything else. Like, no offense to people who have done it well, but that defines the average watchmaker when it comes to business sentiments. They'll do some stuff really well, but they will indulge in their own sense of competence, and they think that they'll do well in all areas.
Yeah, and for the many I know, because I'm friend with many independent watchmakers, it takes them a lot of energy because it's not their natural way of being, and they're not especially happy doing it. You have a few exceptions which are kind of rock stars.
You mean the social part?
Yeah. The social part is very tricky for many of them, and they struggle when you know them personally. It's they feel the need because they know they need to do it, because you have to see one thing: when you're an independent watchmaker, you basically have only yourself. You most of the time don't have any budget for advertisement. You don't have many people around promoting your work. So when you start, especially when you are young, you have nothing else than yourself, and it also, a lot of people buy because there's a person behind the watch, or you try to become a big corporation, but it takes like many years and millions, or you basically sell the person you are. So they realize, especially with social media, that this presence is super, super important. But knowing many of them quite well personally, when you discuss it with them and they're honest to you, they say it struggles. It takes a lot of energy from them. Like also from Dubai, I discussed with a few people. I was there with independent watchmakers. They come home exhausted because they're not the kind of people who really like to talk for hours to people. Basically they're happy at the bench. And if they would not be happy at the bench, they would probably have chosen another job, because at the end of the day, they still spend 90% of the time at the bench. And if it's something where you miss social contact, you should not become a watchmaker, because honestly, it's not like you're talking all day long with your colleagues. You're just focused on your thing, and it somehow has to make you happy.
So we agree here, but I think there's also a missing piece. I agree that this is inherently difficult for these watchmakers. It's unsustainable for most of them to be expected to do it. Dubai, by the way, is just very long hours for everyone. So that would be exhausting for any type of person. Yeah. But my question is, why is there a missing enabling element? These watchmakers go it alone because they feel they need to. There doesn't seem to be a lot of help, incubation environments, support. I guess their skills are valuable, yet they feel like they have to go it alone, all like entrepreneurs. Why are they not working with traditional business development partners, distributors? Is this just not available? Help explain why there's this missing infrastructure.
Oh, I think it's a very, very good question, actually. The real reason when you discuss with most of them is the watchmaker who did most of the time managed to find the wrong person and basically lost their business. That's also a bit of a true when you look at how the first generation of this famous independent watchmaker ended up. They ended up without their brand, basically. So I don't want to make a list right now, but
no, you're right. But look, it doesn't take a genius business person to not say, let me agree to something where I can foresee someone taking my name away from me. Like, these guys went in it asking no questions. Like, the next generation should just learn to ask questions, not say, no, we'll never do this.
Yeah, for sure. And also I would say the new generation, many of them are also somehow better, or probably maybe better trained, or have access to better resources, are somehow better in business building than the ancient used to be. The previous generation was probably.
Well, they have AI now.
Yeah, maybe, but also at school, in the watchmaking school, they give them a bit of a broader education, which goes beyond just putting together watches, which also include a bit of how to run a business, and
right.
So they also have a bit more knowledge, and again with all the. Artificial intelligence is obviously also one tool, but I would say, you have much more information readily available, and also for the last few years, the business has been somehow easier in the sense of it wasn't that difficult to find clients as it used to be. I remember when I visited Dufour first time, like 30 years ago, you could just call and go in his workshop, and he was super happy to have you, and he had an entire day to spend with you even without you buying anything. Is because these people, even Dufour was probably the biggest star at the time, but nothing compared to what it would be nowadays. In the sense of the interest, and when I went there at the time, I could still order and get a simplicity within a few months, like not readily available on the table, but not waiting 2 or 3 years. My point is the business massively changed, and especially since COVID, and all these watchmakers are really have to face a demand which is of a very different nature than it used to be. Because before, also I visited Vianney Halter many times at the time. I mean, there were really only nerds buying these watches, and there was no idea of making money out of it. Because honestly, you could not, even if you would buy a Dufour, you would be happy if it would just keep value somehow. But even that was not sure at the time. And so the buyers were really, really of a different nature today, when you have a lot of speculation and people see it somehow as an investment grade.
This notion of investment grade, you and I know and others know that this is not typically how it works. You buy a watch, it depreciates. With that said, there's been this larger meta culture out there of quasi-investment discussion around watches, where there's this notion that you can buy a watch and consider it like an asset, like gold, that might hold value or maybe even go up. This is not really a real thing, but a lot of people believe it to be, less so today. But my question is, how important has that mentality been over the last 5 years, and how important will it be over the next 5 years?
Well, probably that's where the biggest danger lies for the industry, in the sense of, I would say the moment it's proved to be wrong, that watches are not the investment people think they are, or not on the scale they think they are, I'm sure we will lose a lot of buyers again. I think a lot of people entered the game because they had the illusion they could both spend, have their hobby, have something nice to showcase on their wrist, and still having an investment. It's a lot for one single item. I mean, you have it also as well within the car industry. Obviously, people collecting supercars from Ferrari or from Porsche, I mean, they do it because they're not losing the million or 2 million they spend on it. In a sense, it's also part of an investment. But I mean, you cannot build an auto industry on that, and you cannot build a watch industry on that premises, you know.
So you said something interesting about proof. What would it take to prove to someone that it's not the investment that they thought it was going to be?
First of all, I hope it will sustain. I mean, the proof is just when the market will go down again, as it always does at some point. So you will probably see a few people still keeping high value, and then you will see which brands have been properly managed and which are not. So how many watches are really around, how careful they were by selling to whom, meaning not too much to people who just resell systematically. I think. But again, for the time being, every young watchmaker leaving the school in France creates his own brand and somehow finds clients. This for sure cannot go on forever, because not everybody will become Journe, you know, in the sense of there will be some people with, in retrospect, you will say are great at watchmakers, and probably the watches will keep and even increase in value. And you will also look back to some people where people still invest because they think there will be the next big thing. And so there's some kind of fear of missing out. But in the 5 or 10 years, you will look at them and say, well, guys, these are just regular fair watchmakers with nothing to write home about. Because to become a great watchmaker, or to have a legacy, or to create something, you need a lot of stuff. I mean, not everybody became Breguet, and believe me, they were probably at least some as talented watchmaker at the time. But Breguet has so many things, I mean, which made him unique. He was a good salesman. He was an incredible designer. He was capable of getting the best watchmakers around him, also especially in Switzerland, to work for him. I mean, my point is, what happens now, which is a bit crazy to me, is very young watchmakers, which in my eyes cannot be considered mastered because they just left school and it takes years to really master your craft. And they still manage to sell out within 1 or 2 weeks, which means that people are speculating on these people to become famous someday. And you can say, oh, I bought a subscription from Journe, you know, like a subscription, tourbillon subscription from Journe. He made 20 pieces roughly, and there was, let's say, 1 million, and people, they just want to miss. So every young watchmaker who settled his workshop with 22, 23, 24, I mean, gets clients. And I don't think that these people are just passionate. They also see it as as an early kind of investment, and in the hope that these people become famous so at some point. And here I think we have seen something excessive over the last few years, because for being part of the industry for over 20 years, it needs much more to make a good watch and to be a watchmaker, unfortunately. Most of the time, it also needs you to be an engineer. What people probably also misunderstand a bit is being a very highly qualified watchmaker doesn't give you the tools to develop a movement, just basically speaking. It's a different kind of job. So, of course, you have independent watchmakers who are trained as engineers and watchmakers. So, I mean, I would say the elite of independent watchmakers have a training as engineers as well. So they're both able to conceive it on a computer and to build it with their own hands. But these ones are just very seldom because it's 8 or 9 years of studying. So when I see these some watches made by students, and you are a bit into technique, you really see that it's technically not sound. It might be very well finished, but it's not.
But their watches will break and they don't work. We've been down this road before. Look, let me back up here, and I think this is so important because it's something I feel passionate about. When I started learning about Swiss business culture, at least through the watch industry, the thing that I kept hearing about over and over again was long-term vision. We'd like to have a long-term plan. And around that were built kind of notions of stability and consistency and safety. Yet that mentality that I thought was so important to the Swiss business culture has actually been proven less important than we love money right now. And I've seen a lot of people rallying around this bubble of the investment trend, which in the subtext of your voice, you know will end eventually. I can hear it. You know it. You know it's just before the stupid people wake up. It's because it's based upon a misunderstanding and a lack of predictable results. When you buy a good watch at a good price, you can predict that you'll like it for the long term because it's just as good when you buy it as it is 50 years from now. But if you buy an overpriced good with the belief it'll go up even more in value, you're buying a lie, right?
Yeah.
I say people should buy the truth and buy something they like, because truth always has value. Good things always endure somehow, as long as people know about it. If it's a good watch, eventually enough people will know about it, unless it's really unlucky, and there'll be someone out in the future if you have to sell. But why are you buying a good watch just to sell it? Maybe that helps the industry, but I don't think that helps long-term sales. I think it creates these bubble cycles. So I'm a fan of long-term value, but apparently I'm the minority and everybody wants to try and get rich quick until they're left with a heaping pile of whatever. And you know, what is that called when you're the last person that loses your money? I don't even know if there's a term for that. Is it just loser? Is it average person? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit the bigger fool theory somehow. You already know that you overpaid, but you hope that someone will even give you a bit more for it. I mean, it's a phenomenon we have everywhere. I mean, Bitcoin is a bit of the same idea of getting rich, getting quickly, and in a sense of, yeah, it's what you said, the long run. I think a brand actually watches that really should be managed with a long-term vision. And I would say, like Rolexes obviously are, you feel it. It's nothing is done on the short-term understanding.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you feel that these brands. I'm less sure about other brands because they have shareholders to satisfy every 3 months with some quite good figures. So you see some stupid things being done and discounts and products which shouldn't be done. But to go back to the independent watchmakers, for me, my dream would be that people can just enjoy it for what it is. I mean, I think if you have the means to have something handmade for you by someone you can meet and discuss with, and by essence, he only produces very little because he does it himself, should be enough as the motivation to buy it, and not the perspective of a three-hand watch worth a few 100,000 or $1 million and you paid 50,000 for it. You know, I mean, the expectations are crazy. And I would by far prefer that maybe the industry and the independents sell maybe a bit less, but to people who appreciate, as you said, the craft, no matter what the value is. I mean, you already enjoy something beautiful made for you. You probably have a personal experience because you travel to Switzerland, you meet the guy. It's something quite special. And I don't know why people cannot just spend it and always, especially males, I would say probably women are more in the sense of able to spend something and just enjoy it, and they don't expect every pair of shoes or to get in high in value. But I have the impression men in general, they like the idea of having a hobby, impressing friends, and making investment. And this is a lot, you can just also just spend it. And
well, I think go. You said something important about expectations. I don't have a comment immediately about male psychology. I'll have to think more about that. But on the expectations, I've thought about this. I've written about this, and I pointed out that not necessarily the watchmakers, but a lot of the unregulated media voices have been setting such high expectations for what it's like to own these watches, how you'll feel, how much money it'll make you, how people will compliment you. There's this BS culture online which tells people how great they're going to feel and how amazing their lives are going to be once they buy these watches. And then they get them, and it's obviously not real. It's a fantasy that they bought into. It's a nice watch, but it's not going to change their life. You bring out value to the watch. You can't expect the watch to make you happy if you're upset, to make the watch make you successful if you're not. You can pretend a little bit, but that's not the goal of the watch. It's a piece of art. It's a piece of art. It enhances the wearer. It doesn't replace qualities that the wearer does not already have.
Yeah, I fully agree. I fully agree. But I would say it's the same. The same is true for any goods you can buy. I mean, because between the illusion of happiness it is supposed to provide, but it's used across the luxury industry. I mean, from a handbag up to the new jeans. I mean, it's not typical. It's not specific to watches, right? They always tell you because when you buy a new perfume, it's because you will smell well and people will. I mean, you always sell more than the good. You sell a sentiment. You sell a story.
But the sentiment can be this product is the best that it could be. There's nothing else out there which is good, or we put a lot of time and effort into it. That is a good luxury sentiment. Just skipping past all that to what someone's supposed to feel is like a brain hack. Yes, I know it's common, but it's not ethical. It's definitely not honest.
Yeah, but
it's allowed.
But that's it's allowed, and it's very common in the sense of, I mean,
it's common everywhere. Look, America birthed all this. We're like you can basically get to the point of lying, if not flat out lying in advertising. It's an open sport. Can the big corporate entity lie well enough to make you spend money in a way you shouldn't? That's the whole American game. Okay, we invented it. We're the best at it.
If you would only buy the stuff you need, basically, I mean, the entire economy would collapse because you wouldn't buy...
Completely collapse.
You wouldn't buy 10% of what you're actually buying, so yeah.
So you make a dream and then you sell to it, as opposed to simply making better and better and more useful tools. Because what we learned is when we make great tools, there's not enough people out there that know what to do with them. So skipping beyond that, skip beyond the tool and what you can build with it, get to how do you feel after you've made that thing, and sell that. And then once they buy it, they're like, wait a minute, I don't feel this way. Well, because you didn't accomplish anything. You bought a trophy without doing anything to deserve it.
Yeah, but I mean, watches, you can buy them for many reasons. For me, I mean, what I would dream of is that it would be just enough to find it beautiful, well made. Then we can discuss about the price it's worth to you or to society. But the thing is, seeing it as a potential investment, or that's something I find quite dangerous.
Well, we agree.
It's dangerous. It's really dangerous for the industry, because you're not just talking to real watch lovers, you're also talking to people who see it as an investment. And of course, the moment this shows to be not that true, I mean, if people always ask me what watch should I buy to not lose money, and basically, I mean, there are just very few watches. I say
don't buy a watch.
Basically, yeah, the best way to don't lose money is not to spend it. But if you really feel the urge to still spend it, I mean, there are very, very little watches over time who proved that somehow they have a value. And honestly, you can just think of Rolex. And again, you have to be very careful in what you buy, because if you buy some kind of bicolor, bitone, some kind of Datejust. I mean, sorry, it's probably not keeping its value as a Submariner would. And even at Patek, when you look at it, most of the product you get them with a discount, and it's a reality. If it's not a Nautilus or not something really special, if you want a perpetual calendar, you can get it today, and you get it with a discount. And if I had to buy a Patek, I would buy a perpetual calendar because this represents the history of Patek. This is exactly the kind of watches they should be famous for. But nowadays, people get crazy for a Nautilus. But my point is the taste evolve. So it's not because people are crazy about steel sport watches for the last 10 years, they will be in the next 50. And I mean, you can never tell to someone, just look at the brand because it will keep value, because within the brand itself, I mean, even at Rolex and even more at Patek, a lot of watches lose value. So you should never buy them with that perspective in mind. And you should never choose the model because you think it keeps value. You should choose the one you really want to wear, right? If you are not into sport watches, why should you buy a Nautilus? Just buy an elegant gold watch, which if you prefer that. Even if the market is not hot on that, what's the point? You are supposed to wear it. And
well, you answered the question better. When someone asks you what watch should they buy, you answered it. The one you want to wear. That's the only answer.
But people always have in mind that it will cost a lot, and they're a bit afraid of spending that money. So they want.
Then don't spend it. No one should spend money they're afraid to spend unless they're in jail.
I agree with you.
I mean, that's what our industry has come to.
Yeah, I agree.
Don't be afraid. Put your money here. No, that's awful.
I agree, but people think, if some point I need to sell it. Yeah, watches are quite expensive, and so people. But I'm fully with you. You should really.
Do they need to be so expensive, Sebastian? Do they need to be?
Do they need to be? That's the last topic. You know that. I think somehow yes, they need to. But for many reasons. I mean, I think watches. You see it also at the last figures of Swatch Group. It's very easy to lose money with a watch company. And even like something like the Swatch Group, where you would say they're highly profitable, they're highly not. My thing is not that easy, or we could make a list, Ariel, you and I, of big brands which are not profitable in big groups, where we know in big groups which are the brands supporting all the other ones. I sometimes have jokes with people working in big brands in a group, because I always said, you pay the rent for 5 or 6 other brands which are not making any profits. So,
but why is that a bad thing? Why is that bad?
That they don't make profit?
It's the same as Hollywood. 80% of the stuff is paid for by the successful 20%. It's always been that way. Yeah,
but the thing is, people have the impression that watches are too expensive, and like basically every brand is somehow making a huge profit. And the truth is very different in the sense of you have way more.
So why do they feel that way? Why do they feel that way? There's a very good reason they feel that way.
Well, that's different reasons. I mean, the first reason is over the last 15, 20 years, the watches really tripled or quadrupled in price. So people are wondering because the price increase of watches is higher than inflation by far. But you have different factors. I mean, especially for the Swiss-made ones. I mean, obviously the dollar collapsed compared to the Swiss franc, which is something people probably tend to forget. It not just collapsed this year about 15%, but it collapsed over the last 20 years way more than that. And if you look at the British pound, it's a catastrophe. I mean, selling a watch in England nowadays, I mean, the pound, divided by 3 or 4 in 20 years. And then you have the high salaries in Switzerland, and obviously also the expectation of these big companies to make more profits, that's for sure. But the combination of all of that makes that watches have gotten quite expensive over time. But my point is just to say that the belief of people is having that watch companies are highly profitable is basically just true for very, very few of them.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I also find it hard as a consumer to sympathize, because none of the things you said are anything that the consumer should be at fault for or be asked to subsidize.
I know, if for sure not.
You know what I mean? Their cost of business has gone up. that doesn't mean the consumer has to be asked to pay more for less. So I think the consumer is making a very reasonable deduction that watches are not just more expensive, but they're a worse bargain. And I think what I want to say is they're no longer as competitive. I don't think price is the issue. I think it's how much are you getting for your money. And if you look around the landscape and you say, it is 100,000, but I can't get anything like this for 100,000 anywhere else, I guess it's competitive. Yeah. That's the calculation the Swiss are failing on. It's not the sheer price. It's they're becoming less and less competitive and oddly becoming more and more arrogant about it.
Yeah, but again, I mean, if you're price sensitive, you find crazy stuff as you have never found before. Again, because you have all these micro brands who offer crazy value. I don't know how
Who's not price sensitive? Who isn't? Let's be honest. Who is not price sensitive? Even super rich people, they're price sensitive in the other direction, where they want things to be expensive. Every consumer buys things is so sensitive to price.
Yeah, but I would say like the average Richard Mille customer doesn't try to figure out the real value of the thing. I mean, he buys it because he likes it and it makes him feel good. But I mean,
you know their number one concern, right? The number one concern of a Richard Mille buyer?
Tell me. It's to get stolen.
No,
it's someone attacks them, no?
No, well, maybe that's the second concern. The number one concern is that no one bought that watch for less than them. They need to be reassured that other rich people are buying it. They are so worried that they're the one spending the most out of all the people buying these watches. That is the ongoing worry that they have. Every single one of them.
Okay. Yeah, but they're not wondering how much does it cost to be produced, right?
I get price sensitivity is a concept that takes different forms in different consumers. I'm simply saying it's part of every single calculation in some way.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to be taken for a fool. That's for sure. But my point is, if you like watches nowadays and you don't have a huge budget, or you also don't need a boutique and to drink a glass of champagne when you get your watch, you find crazy bargains all around. I would say it's a perfect time for buying watches right now. I mean, vintage has coming down massively. You get crazy interesting designs for no money. You have many brands selling exclusively online, offering crazy values where they put maybe a multiple a factor of 2 or 2.5 or 3 on the production
price. Like Albishorn.
Yeah, but Albishorn is very niche. I mean, I'm not competing with mass market brands.
Yes, you are. You're trying to take down Tag Heuer. I know it.
It's a long way. It's a very long way to go. I do 200 watches a year. Now, but my point is, when you look at it like with an Excel sheet of, I want to find a great perpetual calendar for little money. I want to find a great split chronograph for little money because you are a collector of some kind of stuff. Honestly, you find crazy watches. I mean, I'm a collector myself. It's super hard to resist because you see bargains all around. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, watches from the 90s to the 2000s, you get the best offers ever, and they have never been as affordable. I mean, if you want a good watch, there's almost nothing can beat a Girard Perregaux from the 90s or 2000. You roughly
so
pay
cheap.
You
so
pay
cheap.
$1,000. Yeah, so cheap. And I mean, I think in my view, in my book, good designs, super well made. You pay $1,000. I mean, it's just plain crazy. I mean, So if you are into that and say, look, I don't want to pay that and that for that and that brand nowadays, which I'm fully agreeing on, you have a multiple of very affordable micro brands. But you also have big ones like Tissot. I mean, it's not overcharging by any means. I mean, you get crazy.
Here's my point. If a brand is competitive with its pricing,
yes,
from the start, no consumer ever thinks to themselves, am I going to get fleeced when I resell it? They don't care. The only time I argue that consumers really care about resale is when they firmly believe the retail price is very high to begin with. Okay? I think that the industry set itself up for this trap by keeping to flaunt resale and flaunt luxury. And they got to the point where no one trusts their prices anymore. It's about trust. So the competitive watches, the Tissots, the things that you're mentioning, no one's like, oh, am I going to be able to resell this? No, because they know it's a good value and they know that it'll continue to be a good value. They're not worried about that.
Yeah, but still, I mean, Tissot is probably one of the brands struggling the most as well right now. And when you look at the price they offer and the quality and whatever and the history, because it's a brand with a very long history, it's very hard. So my why do
Struggling
I take
how? Struggling how?
volume wise? I mean, they're probably. I mean, Swatch Group doesn't publish the exact figures per brand, but how we feel it in the industry and what you hear. I mean, obviously they're not doing particularly well. Then they're probably not doing particularly bad either, but it's not like they're striving. And I would say,
but who is in the group? I mean, compared to Hamilton, Longines, I bet they're all doing well within the group's comparative rate right now. Maybe not historically, maybe they want, but Tissot is still a shining light at the Swatch Group.
Yeah, probably it is, but the entire Swatch Group is not a shining light anymore as it used to be. It probably will be again. But when you see also the stock price and when you see the profit, it has never been that bad in over 40 years. So my point is...
Yeah, but the stock price means nothing. The stock price of none of these luxury groups do. I mean, it means nothing.
It just reflects that the margins are extremely
just
bad.
Confidence. That's all it reflects, is confidence.
No. And the margins have never been that bad.
Yeah, but
I mean,
again, the hikes themselves don't care. Nobody there cares about the share price, but shareholders. They're holding on to this horrible asset.
Yeah, I think being a shareholder of Swatch Group is not something very pleasant. But the point is more that it still reflects a business reality. Something we also discussed before, Ariel, is the fact that we just lose volume every year, and obviously the brands which are built on volumes, and most of them belong to Swatch Group historically and still today. I mean, you just see that the volumes just divided over 10 years.
Can I make an observation?
Yeah.
2 other things have been decreasing each year. And those things are distribution partners and marketing budgets. It's not surprising that they're selling less when they don't have people helping them and they're not telling enough people to buy watches. These things have also been dropping.
I mean, that they try to verticalize distribution, that for sure. But you would really say...
That didn't work. Destroyed volume.
But do you really think that the marketing? I think they still invest in Formula One and all kind of stuff.
That's expensive and does very little. I mean, you want to know what their most powerful marketing is? Giant signs in cities. To this day, that is still some of the most effective stuff. Okay. The complicated campaigns they used to have with videos to explain things. Now their marketing campaign consists of like a couple of days off and then off to the next product. You think the whole world could learn about a complicated, expensive luxury thing within the period of a week? Hell no.
Yeah, that's interesting. I will give it this. I will think about that. But my understanding as well is if you put yourself in the shoes of a consumer nowadays, you can get crazy stuff to wear. You don't need actually to have a wristwatch, right? So you can obviously have any kind of digital device. Might it be an Apple Watch or whatsoever? But still, I mean, when you have $1,000 to spend, you have a lot of options, right? And
yes, it's a status symbol. Teach the status and then sell to it. The watch industry is not explaining the status enough. To some people, yes, but they have to say this gives you status.
We even compete with a new iPhone or any new, you can buy so many.
So what?
I would say that the market. I mean, obviously you have stuff which has been done wrong, and I agree with you. Distribution is probably one of the big issues. Advertisement, I don't know, but if you say that But my point is, the biggest shame is what the Swiss industry tried to negate for years is that the digital device would have an impact. And my belief is, if you have $1,000 or $2,000 to spend, you have crazy good alternatives to watches, right? As a personal device, you can buy a super
but
expensive
I don't think they serve the
iPhone.
same thing. A woman doesn't choose between a handbag and shoes. She gets both.
Yeah, but if people have to choose, and I think we are in an economy right now where people have to make choices, you can also impress people probably or somehow with the latest or the most expensive iPhone.
It's the hierarchy, right? You need to reach people who are already comfortable getting the phones they want. After that, there becomes a higher level of luxury demand. You're not going to compete with someone who's choosing between a phone and a watch. You're finding someone who can pay more than that.
I agree, but these ones were the consumer who were buying a $500 Tissot watch. That's exactly why the Swiss want to go up in price, because they have the impression is the higher you go, obviously the volumes go down, but you are targeting a different audience, which actually, exactly as you said, has not to choose between a phone and a watch. They basically can buy both or everything.
I just see it as being something else. They're trying to use the price to do the marketing for them. They're trying to suggest something about the product with the price that worked 20 years ago with Omega. It doesn't work anymore. Consumers, as you said, have too many options. They must be given more details. Why is this a good device? Why is this interesting? They can't assume people even know that wearing a watch makes them feel good. The industry is not teaching them how cool a watch is. They have a little bit here and there. Look at the FHH. Beautiful mission. Has never actually been funded to do most of it or even allowed to. Brands have been holding them back. I mean, what a strange situation. For 20 something years, you've had these group of young people who just desperately want to get people excited about watches, and nobody that even pays them will let them, right?
Yeah, but Ariel, this is something I love it that you're still passionate about it, but to be in the industry for so long and meeting so many people, I mean, the truth is it's very, very hard to convey the technical comprehension. Look, even for engineers, and I'm working in development, okay? So I read patents. I've patented myself over 10 stuff, which I invented. So I am a bit used to it. But even then, when you get confronted to something fully new, let's say the last Breguet with magnetism, okay? If you really want to dig deep into it, and not just saying, yeah, they're repulsive magnets, and yeah, it makes sense, doesn't touch, it's very interesting. But you really want to understand the kinematic of the thing. It takes a bit of technical understanding, and it takes some time to read the patent they had. I mean, the Swatch Group filed it, not Breguet. And you need a bit of understanding. My point is, I would say Patek Philippe never ever sold a perpetual calendar based on explaining how the little gears work. And that's also the sad truth about it.
I think they did, just not during our lifetime.
I have never sold any advertisement. I mean, look, Rolex never showed a movement up to maybe 10 years ago.
But the people in the store did it. The people in the stores, they would talk for them for hours about this stuff.
That's a good point. Probably in the store, you had some people at the time who had the necessary knowledge. But I would say that nobody bought a Rolls Royce back in the days because the engine was described in details. They just wanted a Rolls Royce because it was basically the best they could buy, and they felt reassured probably by the seller who told them, just look, it's the best car in the world, or it's the best watch in the world. And when you could, in the 50s, 60s, when you could afford a perpetual calendar from Patek, you were the aristocracy, right? You could afford it. But I'm not that sure. How can I say? If to sell the product, you need to educate people into details, I think it's a lost game, because it will take millions of years, and it's extremely difficult to get the attention of people over 10 seconds. Look, Instagram. When you do a post which is longer, or you do a video longer, I mean, you lose 90% of the people after 12 or 13 seconds. So go and explain. And the other thing is, when you look at brands, we both know brands which are technically outstanding, who have great innovation, and that just don't sell.
You don't think you're a bit cynical about this at this point?
No, because you have really great watches who people just don't care.
You expect everything to get popular right away.
No. I have one very good example. Honestly, I think one thing I really experienced firsthand. When I started at La Joux-Perret, long before you were born, basically, so many years ago, it was very interesting. You had brands who could compete against bigger ones by offering more. Like at the time, like typically a Maurice Lacroix, honestly, it was a way it could have a split-second chrono, and it could be competing against a non-split from Omega or even a Daytona somehow, because people were interested in complication. When I started at La Joux, one of the big bestseller products we had in store was a split-second. We were selling it across like, let's say 15 brands, okay? And these brands managed to sell these. So they were expensive because a split chronograph is obviously more expensive than a classical chrono. And what I really realized over the years, so when I left Lajoux, I mean, the only split we were still producing was for Angelus, and because we decided to do so. And it was combined with a tourbillon, so it doesn't make, I mean, it's not like the split you could have found at Girard-Perregaux or whatsoever. So my point is, at the time, what we realized as a movement supplier, that all these little quirky things we were doing, this multiple retrograde, this little square chronograph, and the square hand-wound movement, they were not selling anymore. Because people at brands that were preferring an iconic design, let's say they would prefer buying a simple Audemars Piguet Royal Oak than buying something highly complicated from Paul Picot. Like Paul Picot was a great example of that. Paul Picot also, the brand like went bankrupt and I think it's back again on. But when I was young or younger, these people were selling expensive, complicated stuff. And this market disappeared because people want to spend 20K now. They will not buy a Technicum from Paul Picot because they would say to their friend, I have a split with everything. They prefer a freehand from a famous brand. Let's put it like a Rolex and this is very interesting. It's also why for many years, all these specialized movement supplier were not doing, the business started to get worse because brands and consumers were focusing on trophy products, on very, very, very few watches. When you look at it, which watches are hot? Very, very few watches are really, really hot. They're all focusing on the steel, unobtainable Royal Oaks and Pateks. Then you have for the super rich unobtainable Richard Mille, and all the rest basically you get it with a discount. You know that's the truth. I mean, even when you look at Vacheron, I mean the overseas was high in demand for maybe 2 or 3 years because you couldn't get a Patek, and now you get it in store again. My point is people focus more on iconic designs, iconic brands, rather you cannot compensate not being iconic by offering more content. And I strongly believe this is something you could do in the 90s. That's the reason why Chrono Swiss was so successful. They had all we quirky, retrograde, jumping hour stuff you couldn't find anywhere else. They were expensive, these watches. I mean, a Chrono Swiss at the time was more expensive than any Speedmaster. And these guys could compete because people could say, okay, the car is maybe not a Porsche, but it has more horsepower. But nowadays they don't care. They prefer a brand on the hood than saying my car can do that and that and that. And this is something I would say you probably saw in other luxury, in other branches of luxury, might it be shoes or handbags or leather goods, where people really focus. They prefer probably having a famous brand than having an expensive leather like a crocodile handbag. If you go to someone and say, don't buy a Birkin in a traditional calf leather, buy a crocodile handmade stuff in Italy from that guy. No, because they want a Hermes. And if you come and say, look, but it's handmade, it's crocodile, the leather is way more expensive, they say, look, go away. I was dreaming of a Birkin or whatsoever for many years. And this is something, especially when I was working at La Joux-Perret, we really had that shift of not being able anymore to sell specialized stuff.
So thank you for sharing that experience. And I definitely do not deny that it has gone on. I have some different opinions as to the causes of it, and then I have slightly different definitions for some of the terms. The way I see it is that consumers want to buy desirable goods. Before they want to buy anything else, they want them to be desirable, especially when it comes to the money. After everything is desirable, then they want an interesting, desirable thing. So what I see is a failure of many brands to create core desirability and consumers going after the small number of companies that have been able to create core desirability. Now, the question is, what happened? Is it as simple as saying there's a reduction in marketing? Yes, but I think a better explanation helps. I think it actually has to go back to the distribution. In the past, when watches were sold through third-party distributors or retailers and things like that, those retailers and sometimes those country distributors independently created demand. They said, we have these objects. If we sell them, we make a nice commission. Let's explain to people why they're cool. Even going so far as to market within those cities and those countries to tell people it's cool. The brands often had nothing to do with this. So these smaller brands, because that's what was in the stores, that's what the salespeople were fighting to sell, they gained the desirability through the efforts of the salespeople, not necessarily through big traditional marketing or global stuff, but through the effort of these retailers. Brands that they vertically integrated have done comparatively very little to convince local people to sell. They've done big, vague campaigns once in a while, put stuff on celebrities, but there's not really an army of people going to locals, going to the stores saying, this is the watch you want and why. In my opinion, that is a major reason why a lot of that demand for those watches went away, is because those distributors, those stores, those channels went away. They were pushed, other things were pushed in their place, or they went away altogether. And so it was the big brands that were doing that. But even within the big brands, people are bored of the same Audemars Piguet. That's why Richard Mille has to create changes all the time. It's difficult for them to sell the same thing. They can't make icons. If they could make icons, they'd sell the same thing all the time. Only a very small number of them can. So I don't disagree with some of the status quo, but I'm not sure that we're talking about all the reasons why it got there, or that these types of watches that are less expensive and cool but interesting complications are forever no longer going to be interesting. I still think they can be if we can manage to get the desirability engine going again. And I think it really goes back to these third-party watch retailers. Look how motivated they are. And then all these brands are still so insistent on selling themselves. You have this army of people online, influencers. Everybody wants to sell watches, yet these brands just want to do it themselves. I just think that's so dumb.
Yeah, but look, there's two things. I mean, there is a trend, I think, which is not recognized by me, but like you read everywhere, is the super brands. And I think this is something you have across different industries.
I don't know what that means. What's a super brand?
That you have like really big brands who just, the winner takes it all, in a sense of brands who just have such a recognition that they basically take very, very large part of the market. You have a focusing, I would say, on less brands maybe than you had many years ago. And you see it across different industries, where you don't
see it as a failure of competition.
Is the fact that Apple has such a market power? Is it a failure of other devices being well explained? I don't think so.
It's really hard to make one. It's like, why aren't there more chip makers? It's hard to do. It takes a huge amount of infrastructure, skill, investment. Making a functioning phone, oh my God, it's like making a car.
I agree. But the thing is also the even if you put aside, because you can also buy at Foxconn, you can also have your phone made somehow. The thing is, people want an Apple because it's an Apple product, and people want a Rolex because it's a Rolex. Because one thing you have to see, when the period I'm talking about, let's say the 90s, all right, when you could buy like a complicated Chronographs or Maurice Lacroix with some kind of weird stuff in it. You could, a Submariner was readily available. You could go in the shop and buy a steel Submariner without anybody making a fuss. My point is that you can say that Rolex did a better job over the last 20 years than other brands, probably, but it's also the fact that maybe actually due also to social media, people focus on the same, because we probably put all to think more similarly. And also the fact that we have like a world culture somehow. At some point, when you remember in the 80s, 90s, where you didn't have the social media much younger, but I remember when I was traveling, for instance, to Italy, Eberhard was the brand in Italy for watches, because they had like a niche. They have worked on it for many years. So you had you had countries in the world where you had little brands which were really powerful, because historically, probably as you said, they had good retailers. They were well distributed. But the thing is, nowadays, with all the social media where everybody in the world look at the same Instagram and the same TikTok and the same stuff, I would probably say that all that mainstream culture also killed the little free spaces brands might used to have in some countries, because nowadays everybody is fed with exactly the same content all over the world. And it's also why probably as people are always focusing and influencers are focusing on the same brands because makes them feel rich or whatsoever, it has participated to the fact that everybody just consider very few watches as being very, very desirable. And when you wear, I like to wear watches from the 90s and so on. I buy a lot of these old stuff. I mean, people just look at you and it's really a nerdy, it's still a nerdy hobby. But so there are two kind of watches. If we have to summarize somehow, there's the one which are highly desirable by a huge portion of the population because they know it. They probably don't know much about watches, but they heard about Nautilus and they heard about Royal Oaks, and they never heard about all the rest. So if you want to impress or if you want to wear it because you want to show something to someone, you should probably not wear a Chronoswiss from the 90s because nobody cares. I
hear what you're saying. And it's an interesting observation. Again, I would cast it slightly differently. I would say that there are gateway watches and there are enjoyment watches. And everyone has to probably enter through a gateway watch unless they have some special mentor or, they learn about the weird world before they learned about, Rolexes. But the way I see it is that it's good if there's this winner-take-all idea to the sort of top mainstream watch, because what we find is that once someone buys the mainstream watch and finds themselves interested in watches, they immediately want to start buying less mainstream watches. So I think it's a good thing, but Rolex is a gateway. Maybe I actually think you should buy Rolex as one of your last watches because you won't even be able to appreciate it until then. But it doesn't matter. The point is, even if there's a small number of desirable watches, what I firmly believe is if someone is in it for 3, 4, 5, 6 watch purchases, more than that, they will very quickly get curious and find this deeper world. So that's why I feel okay about the situation, not worried about it. I don't know if we'll ever go back to the type of distribution we used to have. I do think that third-party retailers should be strong again, but I think that there's hope.
Yeah, I know, but don't get me wrong. I don't see it nor negatively nor positively. It's just something I realized being a collector myself and in the industry for so many years, that the interest, where I also noticed it a lot, I still have I was reading a lot of these German magazines. In Switzerland, we had very few of our own, so I was reading the German ones, which was very technical. They were testing watches like you test cars by precision and water resistance and whatsoever. And when I look at all the old edition of Armbanduhren and Chronos, I was always amazed by the diversity of stuff we had. And when I look nowadays in catalogs, honestly, of most brands, you have a much. I mean, from the movement perspective, everybody developed somehow his own manufacture, but they only do 3-hand watches. So if you are looking for some funky indication, some cool stuff, honestly, you have less stuff around those than you used to have.
So I'm going to make another interesting observation. Then I want to get to the last question because we're actually over time, but I love this chat. Back in the 90s, when you were developing a watch, you had to sort of go into your little vacuum and think about what people might like. You had to ask yourself what you liked. You had to ask your suppliers what they liked, but you couldn't compare it to the entire universe of watches out there. Mm-hmm. Flash forward to today. Even in the process of planning what to do next, you're inundated with what everyone else is doing. So you're saying that things are mostly the same, look alike. I think that's because during the design process, people have too much noise right now. Mm-hmm. They can't think to themselves what's original because they're just constantly looking at everything else. It's like it's impossible for them to be that original. Plus, they want to sell and they see all this stuff. They think that's what people want. They don't ask themselves, is the market oversaturated? So I think this is really just psychology and a function of the design process more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. But that's
what's
probably
what's going on at AMT?
So AMT. Well, a lot of stuff. I mean, just AMT, though. So it's manufacturer EMT is a specialized company within the Sellita group where we produce mainly movement tailor-made.
What's it stand for?
Advanced Mechanical Technology.
Okay. That's funny. It's similar to, well, it's actually closed now, but with the Fossil Group had STP, which was Swiss Technology Products.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're out of business now, so we are not competing anymore. Yeah, so the EMT started as a very simple understanding in the sense of, as you know, in the last 20 years, everybody wanted to make his own movement.
Yeah.
And more or less everybody did, but the quality and the quality-cost ratio wasn't good. So it's a kind of a circle. People started by standard ETA product. They switched to standard Sellita. Then they tried to do their own with a lot of failures and also a lot of return rates. I mean, you probably know it better than I, but many of these manufacturer movements do not work good, So people always say Sellita is pedestrian.
But they're so pretty.
Yes, absolutely. And so you go to your retailer quite often. You have a good relation with them. Now, the thing is, it's very difficult to make movements. And on the other hand, when you're a big brand, you don't want to use probably standard products because you want to differentiate. You have a different story to tell. And that's where EMT has its business. It is basically to produce tailor-made movements, but made by people who produce over 1.5 million movements a year. So we have a full set it's our job is to make movements in big volumes compared to many brands who maybe produce 20 or 30,000 movements only. You cannot have the same infrastructure. So people come to us and have their own movement developed. So EMT is mainly that. Next to it, there is also a little catalog of standard EMT product. But the main focus on EMT is a bit like Hennessy producing movement for Tudor, or when you had Rolex Biel, before it was bought by Rolex Geneva, producing and selling movements to Rolex Geneva. In a sense of, so we can enter the big question of what is a manufacturer meaning nowadays, as no watches is done by hand, right? Or very few are. Let's maybe say 0.001% of the industry makes stuff by hand. What really manufacturer EMT offers is a tailor-made solution, which allows a brand to have something of their own. So it's not just designing a different bridge. It's the entire movement is fully made on specs, but still done by a company which is focusing solely on producing and who still has a certain volume. Because what people have to understand is the industry loses volume over the last 20 years. So you cannot expect brands selling maybe 100,000, 150,000 watches a year, setting up a movement production and still being able to sell watches around $4,000 to $5,000. It's not possible.
Well, I mean, the article I wrote years ago, and I talked about how the push for the in-house movement ruined the modern watch industry.
It really does. It did.
Yeah. What you've made is part of the fallout, right? You put together at Sellita AMT is a result of a lot of those problems. So you presented a solution. There's some other companies that do similar stuff. I think one of the more popular ones is Vaucher. Where does AMT position itself? Is it the same kind of expense? Is it low? Is it more affordable? I mean, it's all about, different types of resulting watches. The watches that come out of AMT, what are their retail prices going to be? Where do you fall along this sort of taxonomy of movement makers?
So again, I mean, with the thing with EMT is it's pretty much depend on what the client requests. In the sense of most EMT movements are quite expensive because they're full of technology. They have 90 hours per reserve. We have quite a lot of technical stuff, patented stuff inside. So the price obviously is not comparable directly to a Sellita product. But again, it's the client who defines basically what he wants in it. So you can also have quite a simple EMT, or you can have a very complex EMT. If you want, because most of the EMT, for instance, clients, they take fully cost certified. So of course, if you take fully cost certified and you have a variable inertia balance wheel in it, obviously the movement costs more than a very simple, non-decorated base Sellita. So, I mean, I wouldn't say in the difference with Vaucher, from my understanding, sells the same movement to many brands. I mean, you recognize the Vaucher in the sense of they don't personalize it much. Maybe they do a bit more for Richamille because they do it in titanium with new bridges. But let's say that the other brands who buy them, from my understanding, it's a catalog movement. So with EMT, it's a bit different because we even go so far to have dedicated assembly line per client within the company. So when you visit, you can basically say physically here, I am in the line of that and that client. Because the product is so specific that even the assembly line is tailor-made for his size. For instance, when we go on the EMT movement, we have no standardized diameters, for instance. So the client fully decides the height, the diameter. So I would say the tendency of EMT movement is to be a bit larger in diameter, a bit more like Rolex and Omega, like 28 or 230, because watches, even if they tend to get smaller, still need a bigger movement to have a long power reserve. So, and price-wise, I would say we are highly competitive in the sense of obviously we are in a much higher price than with Sellita standards, but we are still not where probably a Vaucher would be or La Joubert would be. For sure not, because we obviously have this huge advantage of volumes and being fully vertically integrated. In the sense of we can produce every part if we want to in-house fully, so we can have 100%. Now, the only thing we don't produce are rubies. We don't produce synthetic rubies, but otherwise we can basically build everything in-house, which doesn't mean we do because we have a lot of suppliers, but we have the capacities. So my point is, as we do these huge volumes, obviously we can produce even specialized product much more affordably than smaller companies can. And I have worked 10 years at La Joux, so I really see the difference.
Are there any companies right now that have publicly said they're using AMT movements and things like that? I haven't seen it yet. I know it's still relatively new, but what can you say about the types of clients you have right now, or is that still confidential?
Yeah, most of them are confidential. I mean, if you dig deep enough, they somehow say it at some point, but they are no, because obviously they don't want a backlash if ever it knowns to. But it's very, very big brands. You can imagine, because to have your own movement with ours, you need at least to buy 100,000 a year.
Okay, that's a good detail. So when it comes to new complications, yes. I remember companies like APRP and others would like invent their own stuff, and then they would pitch it to brands like, hey, we invented this cool thing. You want to put it in your watch? Do you do any of that, or do you only work on spec? Someone says, hey, we want this layout, Sébastien, designed for us.
We do really both. When we have an idea which we think fits the DNA of a brand, so we really do both. And the interesting thing is, I would say most of the time we pitch something and the brand has another idea. So it just opens the discussion. It's not that people buy what we pitched. It's more that they like the fact that we pitched. And then we take it from there, and then they put their own engineers in the loop and their own ideas. Because nowadays it's a bit different than it used to be many years ago, when you had the owner of the company was also the CEO. You know, you could do deals very quickly but nowadays they are stock listed. They have complex internal structure of decision taking. So basically, I really remember a few years, like 15 or 20 years back, when you could go to a brand and you were talking to the owner during lunch, and the contract was signed in the afternoon, in the sense of the guy liked it, he said, let's do it. Nowadays, when you come and pitch something, it has to go through all the filters of all the middle, top, up to the high management. And then you have the creative people of the brand. And at the end of the day, you end up with something totally different, because all the layers of the client has to put some input in it. But we still pitch a lot. And it's also why it's also one of my main is to go and pitch people with also we go as far as putting our movement and our ideas within a watch, just that it could better explain it also to people who are less trained. You know, we don't just show a movement, we make something around it to put it into perspective, but it's more to open the discussion than to actually sell something. In the sense of, it's almost impossible nowadays to pitch a big company and go through it with exactly what you pitched. But again, it shows that you're interested. It shows an effort. it's still a people's business. And obviously, if you go to people with something fully tailor-made and they realize that you worked probably weeks on it and that you give it to some sort of their brand, obviously you have a better start of discussion as if you say to just people, I just have standard stuff, and how do you have any ideas? So since I am at Sellita, we really focus also why we have internal designers, because we really go and pitch with, I would say, finished products, even if these never get realized. But it's always better to show also to CEOs who might come from other industries. It's better to understand like a new perpetual calendar if you have a fully designed dial and not just a few little black hands on a white paper where you say this will be the days, this will be the months. It's much easier if you put that into an existing model of the set brand, and it's what we do.
That's really cool. I hope you'll show me some of those things someday. We're a bit over time, but we'll have to again have you back on the show. Such an interesting conversation. We didn't even get to all the topics we want to talk about.
No, we didn't discuss Dubai, because Dubai is a great topic actually. And it's,
okay. Well, we can go a few more minutes. It's we're in an hour 15. I love it. I worry about the drop off.
About the thing about Dubai, what we should wonder as an industry is why can't we have such a great event in Switzerland? Why do we all have to go to Dubai to have a great time? Isn't it? I mean, Dubai, even for me, it's the best watch show I ever experienced. It was my first time this year. And
first time.
Yeah, first time. Yeah. And because I went there like basically on holiday, so I was not on a mission, even if I ended up having discussion with Sellita clients actually, and even pitching a product. But nonetheless, I went there on holiday. I wanted to experience the thing, and even for me who are an industry insider, I could manage to discuss to people I never in 20 years. I mean, I ended up on Lange & Söhn booth, and it was Mr. Schmidt himself who showed me something. I mean,
he was there.
That is even something special. Yeah, but look, where is it where you cross Philipp Stern? Not that he discussed much with me, but still where you have these people all around, even Jean showing up, and you could go and discuss with all the CEOs. You had Jean Arnaud promoting his Louis Vuitton watches on the booth. I mean, the atmosphere is super safe somehow, safe in the sense of also I met many collectors, from the US especially, who had these super expensive watches with them. They would never dare wearing them in Geneva, having like and this kind of friendly atmosphere where you have some security control, but it's not over the top. I mean, I don't know if you went to the Audemars Piguet booth, but it was it was fantastic. I mean, it just started a bit, like general, you have them, they want to bring you in Le Brassou, you might like it or not. But at the end of the day, you end up with the Royal Oak number 5 in your hands, and you can play with it. If I go to any shop of Audemars Piguet, they just not even let me in because I have no appointment. And then you go to Dubai and you speak to the guy who co-developed the thing. You can ask tricky questions. The guy laughs because he realized that you're basically an engineer as well or working in the field. And he openly discussed with you the troubles they had, and you can play with the thing. I mean, it's crazy. I mean,
let me ask you this. Why can't Europe put on the good show anymore?
I mean, you mean in Switzerland?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nobody in Europe, let alone the Swiss, want to go to Swiss watch shows.
Yeah, and I fully understand because you are not welcome as a supplier. You are not welcome. Honestly, you go to Watches and Wonder. You have a supplier day, which is basically the last day. They shut down most of the thing because you are a supplier, so you are of no interest, and you might drink too much and empty the minibar. So they try to take some security measures. They also put, the hostess aside. You never know because, the suppliers are a bit on the wild side. I don't know, but even for me, going to Watches and Wonder is a pure frustration because I love watches. I started working in watches by passion. So I go there like still go. Look, I can't still even able to go making holidays. I never go to Dubai. I just went for that show. So my point is, even being in the industry, being passionate about watches, you don't have the ability to touch, to experience expensive watches or to discuss with the people who made them. So I don't know.
So here's why it's great. I've written about this And I'm glad to talk about, because I agree with you. Dubai Watch Week is the best destination watch show. If you're a watch collector, going there makes way more sense than going to Watches and Wonders. There's a few things about it. One is, as you said, Dubai is safe. People feel that they can wear very expensive watches, and they know that if anyone steals it from them, that person's going to be like dead before the day's over, right? So like, it's don't have to worry about that. Second, it's a destination. It's not that easy to get there. The CEOs know that it's not going to be like every schmuck that shows up.
Yeah.
They know that it's a prestigious event. Yes, there's locals and stuff like that, but a local, is going to be very respectful. So it's a sort of exclusive environment where it's out of their turf. They don't have to feel like they control things. It's like someone else. And that's the third part, is the Siddiqui family that puts it on is amazing with service. They care about things like, oh my God, comfort. There's water to drink.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and you don't have to pay for it. Oh my gosh. There's toilets that you could use. There's service staff, lots of it.
Yeah, and clean
toilets.
Toilet,
People working in it all the time.
Yeah.
There's a mixture of things there that I'm not saying are impossible in other places, but it's difficult to get it right there. And again, I want to emphasize the Siddiqui family and that group's dedication to service and experience is far beyond any of what the Swiss brands would ever offer. And it's not just how nice they are to you. The booth, you said the Audemars Piguet booth, right? All these booths, you probably went to more than one, were far more educational, interesting, immersive than most of the Watches and Wonders booths or any of the experiences there. Like they put like some intern on making the booth, right? Like in Switzerland. Yet here in Dubai, it was very clear that this needed to be like close to Disneyland quality, right? Like I'm not saying it was that good, but it was like so much better than any of the experiential rooms I've ever been into in any show in Europe ever.
Mm. Yeah, I agree, but I would say the Audemars and also the Van Cleef and Arpels, which was also quite a wonderful booth. Was probably organized by the headquarters, I guess.
The Siddiquis pushed them. I know this for sure. This was the Siddiquis literally said, "No, this is not good enough."
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Okay. They
were all pushed to have really good experiences.
And they really managed. Also, for me, the Van Cleef was really an experience. I loved it.
Yeah, look, we've been to the Van Cleef booth at Watches and Wonders. It's nice, but you don't learn anything. This one you learned, you touched, you experienced.
Yeah, you had also historical pieces.
I'm not saying that they're shabby in Watches and Wonders, but from an experience standpoint, you walk away with no narrative or barely any. Yeah. Think of Roger Dubuis booth. I love the brand. What did that booth ever tell you about what they were doing? Nothing.
I agree. Yeah. No, but it's very frustrating because once you have been to Dubai, you know that it could be different, Oh,
I'm sorry you tasted good pizza.
Yeah. So I know the taste it. No, because but I think, no, but honestly, I can also understand. And when you are in Geneva and it's you are in an environment which is by far not that friendly. And obviously you need to filter people within the exhibition. You have no choice. But you feel it. You feel it once you're in, and probably the problem as not being part of any brand exhibiting, you basically don't feel particularly welcome. When you are not like a retailer or a journalist where you have appointments, and you just in because you can enter because you are part of the industry, but you are not supposed. Nobody had a real interest in showing you something because I have nothing to sell you. May it be because I'm not writing about watches and because I'm not buying them, or at least not buying them as a retailer. When you go to the show, it's a big disappointment.
It's not a show. It's a giant appointment hall. Don't think of it as a show.
Yeah, but they still see it or they still promote it as a show.
They use words so liberally. Come on, you and I are lawyers. We care about words. You know they don't.
Okay, we agree. But it's even worse when you go because they have days where you can enter by paying, and the people that just makes me sad because they're queuing.
A waste of money.
Yeah, really, and they're queuing to a booth where basically they open the booth to close it. So basically, you're entering something which is closed. I mean, honestly, doing window shopping in any city in the world is better.
Yeah, and then in Dubai, you're like in the Audemars Piguet one, you're like, oh my God, I can touch it. Or the Van Cleef one, it's like, wait a minute, there's stuff to see here?
No, they even offer you to touch it, and you feel confused because most of the time you would never
really
say,
here?
Yeah, you have to say, guys, I am not able to buy it. No, it's a pleasure to show it. I mean, it even happened on the Global Force. I was looking at the big picture. I was with Raoul Pages, the watchmaker, and we were looking at the picture of the handmade. And the girl from the PR came to us and say, do you want to see it in real? I say, yeah, but we are not really clients. No, but we are here to show it. And we ended up with the handmade stuff we took, but I mean, wherever can you be offered? And we were even like feeling uncomfortable in sense of we don't want to take space from you maybe selling it, and say, no, but we are here to share. And it's great that watchmaker also want to have a look at it. And so it's the first ever I could have that.
But that's the way it used to be in Switzerland a little bit. You know that.
Yeah,
Baselworld back in the day was a lot more, just come in and check it out.
Yeah, that for sure. Baselworld was in that respect, just except a few brands, was really great. Because also you have to see most of them, brands, they were grateful for anyone showing interest. And nowadays, if I want to see something in the industry, my only way of getting to see it is because I know people who are working in the companies or developing, and they show it because we share what we develop and we go on lunch and we show the novelties. But if you are like a watch lover and you don't have this access and you just go to the show, me included, you go out and you're just super frustrating. And I never found Basel as frustrating, even if you could not enter the Rolex booth. Patek, you had to run around because they would never let you in. But still, you had all the other ones where you could have wild encounters. I remember when I was a student and I went to the RCE booth. I mean, they were just showing you the stuff. You could talk to all of them. It was super cool. And but again, I mean, it's probably not that easy to make a Dubai Watch Week in Geneva.
Well, at least there's Dubai Watch Week, and it may not be every year, and it may not be convenient to get to for everyone, but at least we have the Siddiquis to thank.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And I hope they can keep it on that level, because I probably think it's quite an expensive thing to do as well. So, because it's getting huge. I mean, it was my first time, but when I discussed to people who have been the previous edition, it seems to get bigger, and probably more and more expensive as well to handle.
Well, look, it's just a matter of which city runs out of money first, Geneva or Dubai.
Oh, that's a tough race.
Yeah. See, they're both holding on to it for the long run. So we have years of enjoyment still left. Don't worry.
Absolutely. No, great.
Okay, we'll end here.
Yeah. Thanks, Ariel.
I thank you so much, Sébastien, for joining me again on this episode of Superlative. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks. Bye.